but we refer to it as MCY, and it has a special place in our hearts. So we're really excited to tell you more details about it. And learning about MCY is going to be a process that is starting now, and it's really going to continue through your first couple of clerkships, because it's one of those things in life where no matter how much we tell you what it is, no matter how much senior students tell you what to do and give you advice, it's really going to be when you are in the clerkships yourself and doing MCY that you're going to get the full sense of what it is. But we're going to do our best to explain, to help set expectations. Lots of advice available throughout, and so this is the beginning of that. So today, thank you. Is there feedback? Okay, thanks. So today we're going to talk about the goals. We're going to talk about an approach to learning, and we're going to touch on step 1 and step 2. I know that's a ways away, but we want to keep you informed. So the goals of MCY are, it's obvious, to develop your clinical skills. It's a year of exposure, and I really want to emphasize that. It's your opportunity to get exposed to so many different specialties so that by the end of MCY and about 9 months later, when you have to put in your residency application, that you have a pretty good idea of what you want to do for the rest of your career, or at least in the next phase of your career. So it's a very long timeline for deciding what it is that you want to do. It's obvious that you're doing MCY because you haven't done it before. But we say that, or I say that, in order to help you understand that we don't expect you to be experts at MCY from the get-go. There's a process in every single clerkship of learning what the specialty is, what the culture is, and of learning how to do that clerkship. And you're not expected to master MCY until the end of the year. You're going to see that there's a steep learning curve for each of you. And the curve would be drawn a little bit differently for each of you. Some of you are going to get it all very quickly. Some of you, it takes a little bit longer. I would have been one of those students where it took me a little bit longer, I think, to really figure out what doing a good job in a clerkship was. But you're not expected to know from the get-go exactly how to do each one. But you are expected to try very hard and to know what there is to know about how to approach it. So students often say, well, I need to figure out now what I want to do with my life, because by doing that I can figure out when I should do that clerkship in my MCY, and that's really going to determine my future. And I would say, hogwash, that any order of rotations will help you get to your goals. Any order of rotations is going to work well for you. And in our current curriculum, we have so much time for students to decide on their specialty, much more than most medical schools, that any order of clerkships is truly going to be fine for you. However, if you think that you know what you want to go into, and I'll preface that by saying that just based on my experience, some of you will know what you want to go into. Some of you will know what you want to go into and change your mind and be totally blown away by that. Some of you will still, at the end of MCY, keep that same specialty that you originally had. And many of you are going to enter into MCY really not knowing what you want to go into and just being open to the process and seeing how each specialty strikes you. However, if you really do think that you know what you want to go into, then I would say the only piece of advice is if you can manage it, don't do it first or second, only because it often takes students a clerkship or two to really feel like they're getting the hang of MCY. That said, every year there are students who go into the specialty that they did their first clerkship in, and it works out just fine. And if you do that specialty as your last clerkship, that works out equally fine. So my point here is don't get worried about what the order is going to be, because it truly will work out. Being in the same group. Years ago, we let students pick their group, and it did not work out well, because what we found is that the groups were really uneven, that they did not have diversity in anything across them, and that some of the process of students picking their groups resulted in a kind of dynamic that all of us, or many of us, experienced in middle school. And I don't know about you, but that wasn't a fun process, or it wasn't a fun process to watch for other people. So we opened it up into truly a lottery, and we opened it up with the new curriculum into a lottery, and we found that it really does work out well, that students sometimes still end up with their friends. They end up meeting many more students who then, some of them become their lifelong friends, and the groups really have much more diversity across them, and it works out well. Being in the same group also, though, doesn't mean that you're going to be together. So you may end up in the same group with somebody you really want to be in a group with, and you're going to find that one of you gets assigned to Bassett for surgery, and the other is assigned here for surgery, and so you don't see each other for those 6 weeks. Or you're assigned to the Allen, and somebody else is assigned to Harlem. And on some clerkships, you meet for didactics once or twice a week, and those are the only times that you see each other. So truly being together with your friends, there are a lot of reasons why not to try to figure it out, because for all of the reasons that I just stated. Late exposure to a specialty. So as you probably know, I'm a psychiatrist. I came into medical school. I didn't go to medical school here. Came into medical school thinking I was going to be a pediatrician. Went through my clerkship year and truly really liked every specialty except for one that I'm not going to name. And so I really thought about doing surgery. And then I really thought about doing ophthalmology, and I did my first elective in ophthalmology and realized that I didn't particularly like being in the dark, and literally. And so, and psychiatry actually was my very last clerkship of my clerkship year. Didn't have any expectation of going into psychiatry, and I was blown away by it, and I found it incredibly interesting and loved it and decided to do psychiatry. And then I did a year of medicine for internship and thought, oh, I really like medicine. Maybe I'm going to stay in medicine. And then I went back and did an elective in psychiatry and said, okay, this is for me, and I've never looked back. So I think that's a pretty typical process, and late exposure in a specialty doesn't hurt your chances at all of planning an appropriate schedule. These are some resources. We'll have these slides posted for you. And these are really good resources. Charting Outcomes in the Match has the national database for board scores and grades and things like that for each of the specialties. Our career advising site, and including our PNS Match Profile data, has a huge amount of really great information about our students going into the various specialties and what kind of metrics students have had, grades, boards, all that, for matching into the various specialties. And then there's also a survey, a National Program Director survey that was done that has some additional information. So, approaching MCY. How many of you were in the workforce before you came to medical school? Okay. How many of you experience conflict in the workforce? All right, virtually almost everybody. Now, that said, many of you who didn't work in the workforce also have experienced conflict. How many of you have experienced conflict in your education? Okay, so far fewer, right? But being in the workforce inevitably means that you're going to encounter conflict, and that is true here. And that is true not just here, but that is true in medicine in general. And so MCY is an opportunity to begin to develop tools, a professional skill set to help you to navigate the inevitable conflict that's going to come up for many of you at various times in medical school and residency, fellowship if you do a fellowship, and out in the workforce. And so we're going to try and help you with that. We encourage you to try and see and learn as much as possible, and I'm going to give you a few tips in a few minutes about learning. This will be your only opportunity in many specialties. I still remember my very first delivery in OB. I still remember scrubbing in and doing it wrong and being yelled at by the scrub nurse one of the times in general surgery. And I still remember how much fun I had on my surgery clerkship, where it was just I was with a great team and got to see a lot in the county hospital where I was working. So it's your chance to see things that you're never going to see again, and we really encourage you to go through the year as engaged as possible, as open to the various specialties, even the ones that you think are going to be irrelevant to your future, because you're going to be, guess what, consulting on some of those patients, or some of those patients who have a primary problem in the other specialty are going to be your shared patients as well. Effort and attitude count a lot in your own enjoyment and how you are perceived. And I really want to emphasize that house staff and faculty respond the best to students who are helpful, friendly, and flexible, and engaged. And they respond the worst to students who are arrogant, missing in action, students who disappear to go study for the shelf or go work out in the free weight club. You can find time later to do that. Who are stubborn or who are entitled. Focus on being collaborative with the team and with your peers. And to use an analogy that's from sports, it's not just about scoring baskets, scoring points in basketball. It really is about how many assists did you have? How much were you helping other people to shine too? How much were you collaborating with your team? Those things count a lot, and they are very much noticed by residents and by faculty. Let yourself be a medical student by reading about and really talking to your patients, because there are going to be times when you're the one who knows the patient best, and the patient has revealed something to you because you have earned their trust. If you have questions, always go up the ladder, which means if you're unsure who to send the question to, I would say start with the senior student advisor for that specialty or for your group. They're really good advisors. And then next in the chain is the intern, and then the resident, and then the attending. If there is interpersonal conflict, ultimately the course director is always the ultimate person in charge. And if there's interpersonal conflict, it says here you should always go directly to the course director. I'd actually say you'd be well advised to start with the senior student advisor to get their take on the situation, your advisory dean, Dr. Emil, myself, Jane. There are so many people here to give you some suggestions about how to navigate interpersonal conflict. And so, but at times you're going to want to speak with the course director as well. So a student came to see me a few weeks ago during my walk-in hours to talk about next year. And I asked her how things were going. She was an MCY, and she said that she's really had a just terrific year. And I said, wow, tell me more about what has contributed to making it such a terrific year. And so she began to describe how she had approached MCY, and I asked her if she would send me an email further describing the ways in which she approached it, because I thought that what she was telling me was so useful. So the first is advice from a resident who said, don't stress too much. Your main objective this year is to learn. If a situation is not educational, figure out how you can make it so. And so the student who I met with gave further advice. What she said is that she suggested constantly looking for opportunities to learn. For example, if there are no patients in the clinic, take the time to talk to your attending about how they would approach, for example, parents who don't want to vaccinate their children if you're in family medicine or if you're doing pediatrics. If your resident is late, have some UWorld questions or other things that you can do. If the surgeon is late, ask the scrub nurse to show you how to scrub in. Make the learning opportunities for yourself when there is downtime, because there is so much to learn and so much that you can benefit from. Is there more? We had some other tips in... What? Okay. What educators actually appreciate more than you will expect is your engagement. If you find yourself ignored and feeling like you're not really learning anything, these are still the tips from the student, try to make up games for yourself. You're in surgery. How many vessels can you see? You're scrubbed in. You're holding retractors. The attending is talking to the senior resident and isn't asking you any questions. Start asking yourself questions. How many vessels can you see that you can name? What are the top 3 indications for this procedure? If you can't think of anything about the procedure that you are, she wrote, stuck in, you're not going to always feel stuck in a procedure. Sometimes you'll feel like you're really glad to be there. Make a mental note that you should read more about it later that night. Constantly look for learning opportunities. Constantly looking for learning opportunities helps you keep your mind off of being evaluated all the time. And while it is true that you are evaluated throughout MCY, I think these days students are so focused on grades and on the sense of being evaluated, and I actually think that it really disadvantages students from enjoying the experience of being with patients, with a team, learning, and really focused on learning. And I know it's not just our students, it's across the country that students are tending to be very focused on grades, on evaluation. Do your best to shelve that, to just try, and you're going to try hard, you're going to work hard, you're going to hopefully give it your best effort, but try to keep your eye on learning rather than, did I score points with the attending? Did they notice that I brought in this article? Did they just try and really keep your eye on learning? All right, any questions so far? All right, I know there will be a lot of questions that will come up over the next 5 months. And so feel free to ask them of any of the people who you feel can give you good advice. So let me just make a couple comments about step 1 and step 2. So step 1's deadline, our deadline for you to take step 1 is February 28th of 2017. That's a long ways away from now. There are no exceptions to these deadlines. It's a really firm deadline. There will be review sessions on, we will have a number of ways of helping you prepare. There will be a panel of senior students with tips and guidelines. This is in a year. We're doing this with the next class a year above you and helping them to prepare, getting advice from seniors or from students a year ahead who have taken step 1. We help you with developing an individual study schedule. So the point here is please do not stress about step 1 at this point. You do have to pass step 1 in order to graduate. Our pass rate is very high, but that is because we're very meticulous in working with students and making sure that you prepare appropriately for step 1, and that really helps you to do well. Our mean score is still well above national. It's really been consistently above national, and we're very proud of that. Further heads up about step 2, which is way into the future, but some students choose to take step 2 close to taking step 1 because step 1 is really a pre-clerkship exam. Step 2 is a post-clerkship exam. And when you are taking step 1, obviously post-clerkship, you're actually in a good position to remember a lot of the material that will help you for step 2. Step 2 is divided up into 2 different parts. One is clinical knowledge, which is the same format, the kind of multiple choice written exam that you're used to, and that you will have shelf exams that are close to that during your clerkship year, and then step 1. And then there's another part that's called clinical skills, CS, and that's an exam that's only given in 5 locations in the country. Unfortunately, not in New York because space here is too expensive. And the closest is Philadelphia. So as we get closer, we will give you more information about that, because for that exam, you want to register for it about a year in advance because the spots fill up so much. And so just an FYI at this point, again, not something to stress about. For step 1, there are some students, we don't want you to detract from studying for your clerkships. That's really what your eyes should be on. There are some students who like to read along during the clerkship year in the preparation books, first aid, some of the other preparation books that are for step 1. And for some students, that works fine. It's not something that we really, recommend. We're very neutral about that. For some students, it's a negative because it takes too much of your time away from doing the work of your clerkship. We give you 8 weeks to study for step 1. The average, I think, across the country is 5 or 6 weeks, so it's really a lot more time than any other school that I know of. And we do it just because of the way that our calendar months for electives align with the way that the clerkship works with 6-week clerkships. So this is just an FYI, and we'll give you information in a more timely way as it's appropriate. We do require that you pass step 1 and step 2 clinical knowledge to graduate, and we require that you take the CS exam and ideally pass it. And the only reason that we don't require that you pass it is that it takes 3 months to get the scores back, and that doesn't work so well for some of the MD PhD students or for students who, for other reasons, are having to take it later. That's the only reason why we don't require a passing score. Okay, so now more of the technical parts about the lottery and scheduling.
Hi, 2018. So for those of you who might not know who I am, my name's Christine. I work in curricular affairs, along with Kimberly, who you've been receiving lots of notes about transition about. And I'll touch upon a couple of main things today. We're going to go over the schedule, which all of you have a handout of. Hopefully you find that helpful. A review of our clinical sites, where we send you all for clinical clerkships in almost all of the disciplines. Selectives, which are 1 week experience for you all. And then how we're all going to schedule that. So from here, this Friday we'll begin the first stage of that, and we'll go over all of the details of that. Okay, so for just some main dates to note, Transition Day is Monday, January 4th, so we'll expect you all to be back on campus for that day. There are a couple other events that are scheduled for that day, but it all ends with the Stephen Z. Miller Student Clinician Ceremony, and so we encourage you to invite your friends and family. They're definitely welcome to come, and that'll be the kickoff, really, for your MCY. So officially Tuesday is the first day of clerkships, which is January 5th, and the end is Friday, December 16th. Okay, so the lottery is what we use to schedule you all for your clerkships, starting in January, ending in December. And we thought it was important to just highlight some of the values that we take in, that we have in creating the lottery and involving you all in each part of that. So the values are really to value student preference as much as possible, and to balance your time, using your preferences, balance your time between New York sites versus our out-of-town sites, and I'll go over what those are shortly. Okay, so just a basic breakdown of what the MCY includes. There are a total of 8 6-week blocks. In those 6-week blocks, you have 8 of your core clerkships. 6 surgical subs, 1 selective, and 2 one-week vacation weeks. In addition to that, we have 2 one-week M&P intercessions where everybody comes back to campus and you're all together and it's great. You can see everybody and we have lots of workshops for you as well. A total of 50 weeks for the year. So this matrix right here just gives you another breakdown of each of those clerkships, the number of weeks, and the sites that we offer those clerkships at. So this will be available for you as well online. You'll see here that neurology is paired with neurosurgery and ophthalmology into one 6-week block. Pediatrics is paired with ENT for another 6-week block. And anesthesiology is always with surgery, usually always before, but there's one block where it's right after. And you'll see across the number of sites that we offer those. Primary care has a lot of sites, so they're not all listed here, but there's definitely we have a full clerkship site description for primary care. Okay, so I'll touch upon selectives. So the goal of selectives are an opportunity for you to get a glimpse of a specialty which you wouldn't otherwise see in MCY. So we partner with a couple of departments in the hospital, here at this hospital, at Harlem, and at Bassett, in these specialties here: emergency medicine, radiology, dermatology, rehab medicine, spinal cord injury, palliative care, and plastic surgery. Not all of them are offered within each group, but you shouldn't really be picking what group you want based on your selective. We'll share more information about when each is offered, and you'll have a chance to rank your choices as part of the lottery as well. Okay, so the first thing to note is on the MCY schedule is that everything is in 8 different groups. So there's 8 different sequences within MCY which you can be placed in one of those groups. OASIS calls them grids. So if you look at your handouts, the big colorful chart that you'll see there, in OASIS it's transposed, so it does look a little different. So I don't want that to catch you by surprise when we involve you in that part of the lottery. But we call them groups, OASIS calls them grids, so you might see that term interchanged. And each of those will represent an MCY group. As Dr. Melman mentioned, you guys will be together for many things, but not always together based on what sites you get placed on. Within your group, you'll also be in a foundations group, subgroup, so they split that again into 2. And during MCY, at least once a block, you'll meet with your smaller MCY foundations group. And those assignments happen much later, and no need to worry about that right now. Okay, so it's just another picture so you could visualize the schedule. Here across the top, you'll see groups are listed, and then the sequence is down. Again, that's transposed in OASIS, so it'll be horizontal. Okay, so the way we'll break it down, we're going to be using OASIS as our lottery tool, so a lot of this information will be repeated online there, and it'll remind you of all the dates and what to look for and how the functionality will be. But as a basic overview of it is that we're going to do it in 4 stages. The first stage is going to determine your group, and once we determine your group, we'll break it down into 3 more stages, which will assign you clerkship and location combinations. So we'll have an out-of-town lottery, which is what we consider out-of-town, Bassett and Stanford and IHS sites, the Indian Health Services, where you have to be placed outside of New York City. We'll have another top choice lottery, so something that's really important to you and that you would really, really like to have as a combination. For example, if you really want to do OB-GYN here, you would put that as one of your top choices. And then finally, the fill lottery, which will include selectives and the remaining clerkship site locations that you have left. And at the end, you'll have all of your full year scheduled for you. So you can plan vacations, you can plan weddings, any other things you need to get together. You can find that. So going into more detail, the first stage of the lottery will determine your group assignments. We'll ask you to rank all 8 choices in OASIS in order of your preference. And last year, just show you quick numbers about how the class ranked and got their choices. So we have a nice spread there. And when you're doing this, you should consider what's important to you in terms of order. Again, Dr. Melman presented before saying that it will all work out. So if you don't get your first choice and you wind up changing your mind about specialty, it'll be okay. There are certain sites, like primary care has Indian Health Services. If you're particularly interested in that, take note. We've indicated it on the chart as well. They're not offered every block, so if that's important to you, then you'd want to consider that as well. We have a 12-week integrated clerkship where we send two students from each group. So if there's a high interest in that, we'll want to spread you out across. So that's something to consider, but that's something that you'll be placed in after the first stage of the lottery. And then any other personal preferences. So again, if you have a vacation planned or a wedding or something other with your family and you want to make sure you have vacation a certain week and it happens to fall nicely into one of those groups, you can try to plan it that way as well. At the end of the lottery, you'll have the ability to switch with somebody in your class. And that'll happen anonymously and automatically through OASIS. So, and we'll get into the details about that, but basically you'll be able to offer your spot to somebody else who has a spot that you want, and any one of those people can accept your offer, and then it'll happen automatically through OASIS. Okay. So the next stages of the lottery determine your clerkship and site combinations. Your assignments will include New York Presbyterian and our other affiliates. We have local sites at Harlem, Creedmoor, Rockland, and we have a lot of local primary care clinics. And as I mentioned before, out of town we have Stanford, Bassett, and Indian Health Services. So 2 of your core clerkships are only offered at NYP, so those will sort of automatically get placed onto your schedule after we do the first stage of the lottery. It's part of the behind the scenes, and we'll make sure you guys all have that. The next 6 you have a choice in, so that's why we've broken it down into 3 more stages in order to get as much preference from you as possible. So in stage 2, for the out-of-town lottery, we'll ask for your choices, and at the end of that, only 1 clerkship will get placed. So it could be primary care at Bassett or IHS, or it could be surgery at Bassett. And you can put as many choices that are possible. We'll preload them onto your list. You can reorder them in whichever way, but at the end of that lottery, only 1 of the courses will be placed. So the same idea for the stage 3 top choice lottery, except you're going to have more choices, not just out of town, but all of them. And then finally 4, it's going to place the rest of them that you have. Okay. So as I mentioned, Bassett, Stanford, and Indian Health Services are out-of-town sites. Each student, we place each student at least at 1 Bassett or Stanford clerkship, unless you have young children, and that's why that question on the MCY checklist is important to put in your academic history, that you have children. Another question that we ask is if you have a driver's license. We do have some sites that require driving, so we'll need to know if you have a driver's license or not. Again, this stage will determine 1 clerkship site combinations, and on the back of the page that we gave out, you'll see a range of the number of spots available. And again, those differ from block to block, so we tried to give you as close a number as we could. Okay. Stage 3 is the same as stage 1, except you have more choices now. So it's not just out of town, it's all the choices we have, including New York Presbyterian, Harlem, all of our other what we call local sites, and you can rank it there. So if you happen to get something that was really your top choice in the first part of the lottery, you still get another chance to kind of put another what's next important to you. Again, after every end of the lottery is released, we'll give you a chance to swap with another student, and that'll also happen within OASIS. The one thing to note, though, is that if you're trying to swap your Bassett surgery with somebody's psychiatry at Harlem, you can't do that. So it has to be the same clerkship. So if somebody wanted surgery at Bassett and surgery at NYP, then you can do a switch there. It's basically a location switch. If it's a clerkship switch, it won't work in OASIS. Okay. And then finally, we'll have the last stage of the lottery, and that's going to include your last 4 assignments. It'll be based on previous stages, whatever else you didn't get placed. So if you've got psychiatry and surgery already placed, it'll be the remaining 4. This includes a lot more choices, so it's going to be a very, very long selections list, and we'll run it a few times and make sure that we get a nice even spread, hopefully as even as possible between you and your classmates, and we'll again open the window up for one-for-one swaps after that. And at the end of this stage, you'll have your entire schedule completed. Everything is available in Oasis at any time, so whenever you want to go look at the clerkship combination of sites, if you want to see where a site is, what the address of a site is, all of that information is there. Clerkship descriptions are there as well. And if there's anything you would like more information about, we're happy to provide that to you. So if you'd like that, please ask. Yes.
That they would be best served by doing their clerkship in that specialty here at NYC. And I'll say that it really does work out. For those students who either are placed into a site other than here and know that they want to go into that specialty, or didn't know that they wanted to go into that specialty and decide to and did their clerkship at another site, it truly works out because what will happen regardless is that you're going to do electives in D&I in that specialty, and you're going to do at least one of those electives here, and you're going to meet with the various people who we recommend who are advisors in that specialty here, and so you're not going to be disadvantaged by not being as well known. And we'll talk about that as we talk more about career planning, but that's not something to really worry about. It really does work out.
This slide up here is just important lottery dates, and again, we'll post these for you. The first one will open this Friday after your neuroscience exam. And you'll have all weekend to rank your choices. Something to note, too, is that it's not first come, first serve. You basically have that window of time to reorder as many times as you'd like. Once it's closed, it will be closed and we'll run the lottery. So, unfortunately, if you do miss that window, you'll get placed in something random, and maybe you'll get lucky in a grid, a grid swap. Are there any questions? Oh. Okay, just a few last reminders. As you know, we have a host of transition events that are going on right now. Please check the schedule every now and then for any additions. There are going to be a few optional sessions that will be added, including some in-class time with the NYP training folks to help you get situated with Web Eclipsis and Crown. And by that time, if you have an ID ready, you can try signing in, making sure you have access. We'll have some senior student panels and hospital tours as well. And be sure to check off the things as you go along on your requirements checklist. You'll get to know that requirement checklist quite well during MCY. It's where you'll track all of your patient cases and anything else that the clerkship would like you to see, procedures, all that kind of stuff.
So that requirement checklist is also where we see that you've gone along and done all the things that you need to do to be credentialed to begin the new fiscal year. So the more that you keep that up to date, the fewer emails you'll get reminding you to do different things. It'll make it a little bit easier for us to make sure that the whole class is really ready to begin right away.
Exactly. We don't want to delay the start of your MCY in any way. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I'm surprised there were no questions at all.
I know.
They're in neuroscience mode.
The slides, I'm going to just make some edits along the way.
Okay, yeah. Did I leave anything out from that?
That's what I'm trying to.
Okay.
What I wasn't sure about, I had made some edits about a week or two ago, and I don't know whether those got incorporated. Anyway.
Sorry.
Anyway.
Okay, I will send them to you. Okay. Thank you.
Are you using this next? Okay.
Yeah, I think you're confusing blocks and groups. Yeah, because if you, I think you were blocks.
What's that?
Blocks. So blocks would be like where in a calendar year, because you're going to go through the year in a group, but each time period in the year is going to be a block, like a block of time. So you should be looking at it that way.
So this is block 2, this is block 8.
Yep. Yeah. So basically we have one spot early on in the year, and then the rest of them are all like early in the fall.
So it's going to be like this one,
And then
this one, this one.
yep.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I was in touch with Dr. Sopnick. Thanks. And then I had another question as well. So, is the window for switching any one aspect of the lottery closed before we move on to the next step? Because, so here's like a scenario. Let's say you're in grid 1, I'm in grid 3, and you tell me, like, hey, you want to switch? And I say, no, I like mine, or like,
You like your group.
yeah, I like my group. But then later you find out you're surgery at Bassett, not surgery at NYP, and I actually would really like your surgery at Bassett, and that's sort of a game changer. Now I'm thinking like, okay, I'll take grid 1 if I can do surgery at Bassett, and I'll switch with you.
You can't switch your grid after it's assigned because all of your assignments after that are based off of the numbers that we have for that grid. Because say you were assigned to this first grid, the number of spots that we have at say each psychiatry location is based off of you doing it during that time period.
Right. But can we just switch basically names on the schedule? Like, let's say at the end of all of the lottery steps, you have your schedule and my schedule. Like, can I just switch with you? Be like, yo, I'm gonna do everything you were gonna do, and you're gonna do everything I was gonna do.
I don't think that Oasis allows for that. You can check with Christine. She's really the lottery expert, but I don't think that allows for that.
My last question, maybe also for your program, is like, if I want to know OBGYN at Stanford, that's like the most important thing to me, more important than the schedule, more important than anything else. Is there a way that the lottery can prioritize that for me?
That's going to be your top choice.
Because that's like number 3. Can I say like I'll take any groups, put me at Stanford, OBGYN?
Because you've got to be in a group first. And actually, that's why at the end you can't completely swap things, because your assignments that are made after each phase are made based off of your grid. Yeah, that's why at the end there can't be that complete. But I mean, once you get your grid, you don't have any site assignments yet, so you haven't lost the phase out of time.
People in your group. So then it's like, it completely changes the game. You're competing with you're running against 50 to 18 people for one spot or 2 spots versus having all of those possibilities. So
That's just the nature of things. You're welcome.
Hi, are you Kimberly Johnson?
Kimberly.
Okay, this has nothing to do with MCY. I have my BCLS training. It's not
Today.
at this address, right?
It is.
So it's at an apartment
Yes.
across the street? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Someone said they got this email saying this, but that it was actually somewhere here in Hammer.
Always just go by my emails, because if there aren't enough of you to take up the space that we have in Hammer, they ask to just do it at their training site.
Okay.
So that's why I send an email to all of you
Okay. I just wanted to make
with
sure.
the address. Yeah.
Okay,
Even
cool.
if you wanted to do a reply all that you heard, that it is definitely at the training site.
You want me to do that?
And I mean, you don't have to, because
I was just confused because I asked somebody and they're like, no, mine was at Hammer. I was
well,
like,
that's
how'd you know?
because different groups
Yeah.
are in different places depending on how many people there are and
I
what day of the
understand.
week it is.
Yeah. Okay, and I didn't see anything on my Oasis,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are benefits to talking to people, and then also the downside.